Well, as we delve deeper into the past of Mr. Tom, Iceberg, and Franky, one thing I can tell you for sure is that it's not going to end well for Mr. Tom.
One Piece Chapter 356, Mr. Tom.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the masterfully woven, wonderfully told, expertly realized tale of One Piece. Now, our last chapter, as well as the few previous to that, have really been the whole flashback front and center on the history of Tom and of course Franky and Iceberg and just kind of their upbringing under him as their pupils. So the last chapter, though, however, as we saw the judicial ship returning after 14 years, of giving Tom a temporary pardon, they were going to kind of revisit his trial for the crimes they say he committed, as far as creating the Oro Jackson, which was Gold D. Roger's ship. And then all hell broke loose, and a fleet of Franky's ships, the battleships that he's been creating over the years, just started attacking the judicial ship. So that's how the chapter left off, and of course it was actually with the chapter left off with just a look of that Spandam guy, just his face, and you just want to punch it, you just want to grab him and, But that's how things left off, and that's right where things pick up. Spandam goes in, and he's got a number of these battleships, and obviously him and his agents have tried to go in and do this whole setup, and everybody's going to fall for it, hook, line, and sinker, because just the people in this world in general seem to be very stupid and very easily led in a lot of different senses. And really, I mean, can you blame them? That's kind of how it is, too, in real life. You see something on the news, or you see it passed around on Facebook or Twitter, and it must be true, right? There couldn't be any misinformation there, because the news told me. Or whatever, or the government told me, or this. So, oftentimes we don't actually do any type of due diligence or research to actually see if something that's being told to us is true. And it's funny because I heard this thing once when I was younger that 60% of all statistics are made up on the spot. And it's funny because whatever you want to put in there, 60 or 70%, it might have been more, might have been less. It's funny because when people tell you things, they'll tell you, well, half of all of this or 99% of all this. And it's like, is that really what it was? You might have read at some point that 32% of something was, but you remember it as, 70. And that's not true then, and people pass these things around as fact. Nonetheless, what winds up happening is the judiciary ship, whatever, winds up getting sunk, and we see Tom and Iceberg, of course, trying to stop him. So they wind up, the ships are close enough, they're able to go and kind of swim out to him. As they get on, Spandam and his little homeboys over there, CP5 guys, of course, pull a ninja vanish and abandon the ships. Tom and Iceberg wind up being on the ships, as some more of Franky's ships wind up coming up behind and then blowing them to all hell, man. And it's a grisly sight afterwards. We see Iceberg laying there, he's bloodied and beaten. We see, and the fishmen, these are huge guys, very big, very large, proud, and just the way that this Tom is, and he's laying there with this big puffed out chest, and he's got this huge harpoon sticking out of his chest, right? And Iceberg's flipping, man, because he's just like, man, Franky shows up and he's like, what the hell happened, And this is where Iceberg just flips on him, the whole with great power comes great responsibility. And you see the flashback from just a couple of chapters ago of like, doesn't matter if you don't want to hurt anybody with these, you should destroy them after you build them, or you should do something, do away with them so they can't be used for harm. And that's really what winds up happening. It's one of those life lessons that, unfortunately, Franky winds up learning in a very, very negative manner, in the worst possible way. So Iceberg, he's just like, and if he dies and this and that, and this happens and this gets pinned on him, I'll never forgive you. And Tom's laying there and he's just like, just stop it. And he tells Iceberg, he's like, listen, it wasn't Franky's fault, just stop. And Iceberg's like, what the hell? Iceberg's pissed because he's like, I'm your loyal person over here. This guy's like a wild card, man. This guy's like a loose cannon that goes off doing what he wants when he wants, and you still love him more than me. And that's kind of what it seems like at this point, like it's a jealousy thing. But anyway, so he winds up going, and Franky's just beside himself. He can't believe that this happened. And then he goes and says that, the spear that actually, pierced his chest or whatever, it was made for Sea Kings, and it was made to go in and not to be able to be removed, And Tom's like, oh, don't worry about that, it's just a scratch. So he gets up like most characters do in One Piece, missing a limb or something sticking out of him, and he's just got this big, like 6 or 8 foot, fucking thing sticking out of him, harpoon. And he's just like, oh, don't worry about it, it's fine. Well, the CP5 guys in Spandam conveniently show up and declare that, they just happen to be there and saving the day and, at the right place at the right time type of thing to go and arrest these criminals. And what kills me is just the dim-wittedness of just the population in general, and even like the judge, Why, after 14 years of doing all this stuff to go and create this train and everything else, and then the day that his trial was coming to have his retrial, before there was even a verdict, he would go and attack the ship that he was actually supposed to be on? It makes zero sense whatsoever, and for people to believe it, it's almost as far-fetched as, hundreds of thousands of rebels rising up in Alabasta because of a few particular incidents that Crocodile made it look like it was actually the king that was turning against his own people. It's just stupid. Hundreds of years of everything being finer. In this case, a dozen plus years of this guy working his ass off with kind of the noose around his neck, so to speak. But he all of a sudden decided to go batshit crazy the day of his trial, right? And attack. It makes no sense whatsoever, but whatever, man. That's the part of the story, and sometimes some of the plot points are a little bit far-fetched, but ultimately, it is what it is. And I'm not going to complain too much more about it because it's not a deal breaker for me. It's just frustrating to see these things. So I like to point them out when I see them and give my opinion on what they are. So everybody's standing around, and they're going to go and wind up having this trial. And as they're all handcuffed, Franky and Iceberg and Mr. Tom are all handcuffed and what have you, and they're going to go and have this kind of makeshift trial and talk about in light of this and that, but why you did this and all this other stuff. And then Franky goes and winds up saying, and he yells out, they yell, it wasn't us, it was that Spandam guy, Nobody believes him. Everybody's like, ha ha ha, yeah, why would the government attack government people, And it was really one of those, like, acceptable losses, for the greater good. It was that theory, that mindset that Spandam was using in this, so I need to get what I need to get, and if we have to kill a few people and make it look like, like some other people did, so be it, So we got to frame somebody. Don't worry about it. We're the government. It's cool. So what we wind up getting, though, is everybody, winds up communicating and talking amongst themselves a little bit. But really, Franky comes out and he's just like, and he says, I regret ever building those things. I wish I had in this net, because he sees all the destruction, right? So Tom goes and snaps his handcuffs off, and I mean just waylays Franky, And even Iceberg's like, whoa, he's never hit Franky before, As much things as Iceberg has disagreed with Franky doing, he's never ever hit him before. So, but his thing is Tom is a very proud person. That whole, like, puff your chest out and go boom. His whole thing is that if you build a ship, no matter what it is used for, good or bad, or if it's a destructive ship, if it's a battleship, if it's a goddamn fishing ship, it doesn't matter. If it's a sailboat, you have to have love and pride and honor in what you do. And that's what he tries to instill and has tried to instill in them. Don't regret you. It wasn't your fault that some other idiots took them to frame them and whatnot. Could you have handled things better, a better disposal of them, or somehow keeping them locked up better? Probably, yeah, that's all true. But don't ever not have pride in the work that you've done and in the ship that you've actually built. Because if you are the builder of the ship, you should have that pride, that respect, and that love and admiration for that ship and for your work. And that's what I took from it. So anyway, what winds up happening, though, is that Tom goes in this spear that's made to not be pulled out of your, not come out. Go in, but not come out. It sounds a little dirty. He goes and he's just like, just pulls it out like it's nothing, And then he goes and he ends up the chapter, which I thought was great, Well, he says this is part of what he said. Men should puff out their chests with pride and a boom over the ships they build. And that was kind of the end of that speech that he was telling Franky. So then, everybody's just kind of looking at him and what have you. And then he winds up saying, he's just like, Iceberg, Franky, no matter what, don't interfere with what's about to happen. And that really kind of, man, it just gave me a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. The next, obviously the next chapter is called Cutty Flam. I think it might actually be the last one of the volume over here. But, man, you know that he's going to say or do some shit that's going to wind up getting him killed. He's going to get hung. He's going to get shot by a firing squad. Whatever's going to wind up happening. It's just such a shame. Oh, man. So, my chapter question, though, because that's how things leave off, is what are your thoughts on, and I'd like to hear, what are your thoughts on the speech, obviously, that he gave to Franky, and Iceberg for that matter, too, and about having pride in what you build and what you create, no matter what it is. Do you agree with it or do you disagree with it? Because some people would say, well, no, somebody who goes and creates some kind of virus or some kind of plague that can ultimately harm millions or whatever, it should be held accountable for what they've done. But then there's others that believe, well, no, science and engineering and in the purpose of moving things forward, you shouldn't be held accountable for something that you built that someone else chooses to use as a weapon of mass destruction or something to harm people. So there's usually a couple different schools of thought on that one, and I'd like to know where you lie. Are you in one camp or the other, or are you somewhere in between? Let me know in the answer in the comment section. Let me know the answer to that question in the comment section down below. God. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next Fun Nation.
If you could remember to follow me over on the Twitter and the Facebook and the Instagram and even my other channel, it'd be much appreciated.